It fed billions and enslaved millions. It built fortunes and fueled colonial conquest. This is the dark history of rice. Rice cultivation began over 9,000 years ago along the Yangtze River in China, where early farmers first domesticated wild rice grasses growing in the region's marshy wetlands. Archaeological evidence shows rice farming communities flourishing along this river valley long before many other major civilizations had even developed agriculture. From these ancient wetlands, rice would go on to become the single most important food source for more of humanity than perhaps any other crop in history. As rice cultivation techniques spread across Asia, they enabled something remarkable: the rise of massive, densely populated civilizations. Rice produces far more calories per acre than most other grains, allowing regions like China, India, and Southeast Asia to support enormous populations on comparatively small amounts of farmland. Elaborate irrigation systems and terraced paddies, some still in use today after thousands of years, transformed steep hillsides across Asia into extraordinarily productive farmland, permanently reshaping how millions of people lived and worked. In many Asian societies, rice became so central to survival that it evolved beyond mere food into a form of currency and taxation. Ancient Chinese and Japanese governments frequently collected taxes directly in rice rather than money, and in feudal Japan, a samurai's wealth and social rank were literally measured in koku, a unit representing the amount of rice needed to feed one person for an entire year. Rice wasn't just sustenance in these societies, it was the very foundation of economic and political power. When European colonial powers arrived in the Americas, they quickly recognized rice's enormous commercial potential in coastal regions with warm climates and abundant water. In the late 1600s, rice cultivation took root in the Carolina colonies of British North America, and by the 1700s, it had become one of colonial America's most profitable export crops, generating enormous wealth for plantation owners along the American southeast coast. This profitable rice economy was built almost entirely on the backs of enslaved Africans, many specifically trafficked from rice-growing regions of West Africa precisely because of their existing agricultural expertise. Historians note that enslavers deliberately targeted West African rice farming regions, exploiting knowledge that enslaved people already possessed about complex rice cultivation techniques. The brutal, labor-intensive work of cultivating rice in swampy, disease-ridden conditions made it one of the deadliest forms of forced agricultural labor in American history. South Carolina's rice plantations, particularly around Charleston, generated such staggering wealth that the region became known as one of the richest areas in all of colonial America. This wealth came at horrific human cost. Enslaved workers on rice plantations faced brutal conditions, including exposure to malaria and other diseases thriving in the flooded rice fields, alongside grueling physical labor that claimed countless lives across generations of enslaved families. Across the Pacific, rice took on a different but equally consequential role in shaping colonial history. When European powers colonized Southeast Asian nations like Vietnam, Burma, and Indonesia, they transformed traditional rice farming into massive export-oriented plantation systems, often forcing local farmers to grow rice for foreign markets rather than for their own communities' needs. This colonial restructuring of rice agriculture contributed directly to devastating famines in regions like Bengal and Vietnam during the 19th and 20th centuries, when export demands left local populations without adequate food. Rice also played a hidden role in one of history's deadliest conflicts. During World War II, Japan's imperial ambitions in Asia were driven partly by a desire to control rice-rich territories in Southeast Asia, seeking to secure food supplies for its expanding empire and military. Meanwhile, colonial policies during the war contributed to the devastating Bengal famine of 1943, when an estimated 2 to 3 million people died partly due to rice export policies imposed by British colonial administrators during wartime shortages. In the decades following World War II, agricultural scientists launched what became known as the Green Revolution, developing high-yield rice varieties that dramatically increased global rice production starting in the 1960s. This agricultural transformation helped prevent widespread famine across Asia and lifted hundreds of millions of people out of extreme poverty. Yet even today, rice farming remains grueling, labor-intensive work for millions of small farmers across the developing world, many earning only a fraction of what their crop eventually sells for internationally. From ancient wetlands along China's Yangtze River, to enslaved Africans forced to cultivate it on American plantations, to colonial policies that triggered devastating famines across Asia, rice's history is stained with far more exploitation and suffering than most people ever realize. It has built empires, funded colonization, and fed billions, all while extracting an enormous human cost along the way. The next time you eat a simple bowl of rice, remember what it once took to bring it to your table.